Hello there. My name is Travis Broadbeck, and I am the Operations Technology Specialist at CARES New York, Inc. Welcome to today's presentation. Today we'll be investigating the signs of racial disparity in the community by analyzing data entered in HMIS between 2018 and 2020. Let's go ahead and get started by defining the objective of today's presentation. Today is just the starting point, and our goal is very big and important. Our objective is to come to an agreement with what the current status is of the community. Imagine this like the State of the COC address. We're just taking the first step in understanding where we are. And after today's session, we can start asking specific and pointed questions that will allow us to drive lasting change in the community. By investigating these questions and learning more about the patterns in the data, we can then recommend process improvements and invest more resources in improving the community's operations. I also want to acknowledge the contributions of Carrie Wright and Adam Feldman for today's presentation. Their perspective and insight are immensely valuable to the community, and thank you for your help. So here are the key points that we want to take away from this descriptive analysis. First, we do see that Black or African American clients are overrepresented in the HMIS when compared to the census population by 6 to 1. In 2019, we also saw a sharp increase in permit-supported housing admissions among Black or African American clients that we want to investigate further. Next, in 2020, we saw there was also a sharp increase in rapid rehousing admissions among Black or African American clients, so we also want to learn more about that. And in 2020, there were no admissions for Black or African American clients in street outreach, so we want to learn a little bit more about how that happened. And lastly, HMIS admissions increased year over year between 2018 and 2020, which either indicates an increase of frequency of homelessness or an improved access to data entry procedures, or just more programs entering data overall. In this first visualization, we're comparing the population of all HMIS admissions between 2018 and 2020 to the census population and the poverty population as reported by the 2017 American Community Survey. We see that although white residents make up almost 95% of the community's population, 12% of all HMIS admissions were from clients who were Black or African American. The same conclusion is drawn when you are comparing the HMIS population to the poverty population. And in both instances, there is an overrepresentation of Black or African American clients in the homeless system. In this visualization, we see the percentage of HMIS admissions between the project types across the 3 years, 2018, 2019, and 2020. And the first thing we notice is that emergency shelters have the most admissions overall each year, followed by homeless prevention projects, then rapid rehousing projects. But 2020 changed the mix with coordinated entry. And the COC did expand its program and offering by hiring a full-time staff member to handle HMIS admissions with coordinated entry. And this allows the system to prioritize its clients and reduce overall recidivism. In this visualization, we see the total HMIS admissions grouped by year and race. And if the data were consistent with the census population demographics, then we should have 20 Black or African American clients in 2018, 26 clients in 2019, and 30 clients in 2020. Instead, we have admissions that are over 100 each year. In this visualization, we're looking at the annual admissions into homeless prevention programs by race. Homeless prevention programs experienced a sharp decrease in overall records in 2020, which made sense when you think about the pandemic and the eviction moratorium and the stimulus programs that were available. But the points to notice here are the share of African American or Black clients or clients with 2 or more races also dropped pretty sharply, enough to be more significant than the overall decline. In this data visualization, we're looking at street outreach programs. Now we're only looking at 51 admissions across 3 years. The population is very tiny. And this is the data that we're looking at after we filter for incomplete data in the race variable and data that has out of range ages in the age variable. So when we look at this, most of these records do come from a youth program and as a youth outreach program. So there could be some data quality issues here. We're not asking or not required to ask all these questions. But in 2020, we did not record any Black or African American clients compared to a handful in the previous years. So just something to take notice of and to wonder how that happened. Here we are looking at emergency shelter program admissions, and we can see that year over year admissions had gone up. And this does make up the majority of the homeless system in the COC of HMIS admissions are in emergency shelters. And we can see that once again, we have an overrepresentation of Black or African American clients, and the pattern kind of follows throughout. Coordinated entry started entering data into HMIS in the year 2020. And by looking at the year's data, we see that it follows the same pattern of overrepresented Black or African American clients. At the same time, an overrepresentation perhaps may not be a bad thing in this program type. For example, if coordinated entry is supposed to address clients with the greatest need through a priority process, then an overrepresentation of clients with the greatest need or priority would be placed first in a crisis intervention program, like permanent supportive housing, which would reduce recidivism rates over time. Now we're going to look at rapid rehousing admissions. Now when we look at 2018 and 2019, we only see a slight increase in all demographic groups except for American Indian and Alaska Native. However, in 2020, we see a sharp decrease in total admissions. However, we see an increase among Black or African American clients. Now, this increase went against the pattern of the two previous years, therefore we found it interesting. However, the sharp decrease in the total admissions in 2020 could be attributed to the eviction moratorium, making new apartments be hard to find, so therefore you can admit new programs, and a lack of capacity in the system perhaps. In this final visualization, we're looking at permanent supported housing programs. The first thing we know is 2020 had fewer admissions. Once again, that could be impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic with the eviction moratorium and other stimulus programs, along with the fact that some programs may have been already at capacity prior to the pandemic, for example. Now, the point of interest that we want to investigate further is this spike in 2019 of clients identified as Black or African American. If we can find out what made these clients successful for permanent supported housing, we'd like to take that and spread that to other clients as well, so that folks can stay out of crisis permanently. So thanks to Adam and Carrie, we come up with some questions that we want the community to consider. How can we use data to engage agencies? How can we use data to improve the process? And how can we use data to determine program investments? From this descriptive analysis, we've come up with 3 questions to investigate as a starting point, but we expect to ask many more questions throughout the process. First, what caused the increased admissions of Black or African American clients in permanent supported housing programs in 2019? Second, what caused the increased admissions of Black or African American clients in rapid rehousing programs in 2020? And how come no Black or African American clients were counted in street outreach programs in 2020? For today's presentation, we looked at data that was from 3 calendar years of January 1st, 2018 to December 31st, 2020. We removed clients without any race data, so when it said data not collected, client doesn't know or client refused. And we also removed any clients that were less than 0 years old or more than 109 years of age. And today we looked exclusively at HMIS admissions, and that is when someone shows up at a program, is entered into HMIS, and receives services. This data is not deduplicated because we're accounting for the total volume of admissions in the analysis, rather than the unique admissions. Lastly, we received our HMIS data from HMIS Awards. We received the American Community Survey data from 2017 from HUD Exchange, and we received the census data from the United States Census website. Thank you so much for watching, and we look forward to your feedback.